Paula Fletcher today. Paula is a yoga teacher in South Australia, and she is kind of multi-talented. She does a lot of pre and postnatal work with women who are pregnant or have had babies recently, and she's also studying yoga for people who have breast cancer and yoga for lymphedema. And we'll get into both of those topics as we go through the interview. Paula, why don't you tell us how you started with yoga and what it's meant to you?
Okay. I started yoga way back in the 70s at the age of 10 when my mum took me along to her yoga class.
Was that unusual to have a child in the yoga class in the 70s?
There were a couple of us there. My younger brother actually came with us for a little bit as well, but it wasn't his cup of tea. But I kept going with it. I really enjoyed it, and I can remember doing shoulder stands and all sorts at the age of 10. So, and it was just a little room in someone's, like a rumpus room built onto the house. And there were no mats, there was no equipment back then. It was just a towel on the floor, and away we went.
Which shows you that yoga can be done anyway, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so you've been doing it since you were 10, and what happened after that?
Well, the 80s hit and yoga wasn't quite so cool anymore because everybody was doing aerobics and Jane Fonda workouts were the thing. So I kept drifting in and out of yoga, though. I would pull my mum's books out of the cupboard and away I'd go every so often, and then I'd drift away again, and then I'd come back. And it wasn't until after I had my own children that I reconnected with yoga in a very big way, and I started my own daily practice. It became not just going off to a class, but a thing that I did all the time at home in a whole variety of ways. You know, it wasn't just about asana; it was about living yogically as well. That became reinforced later on, but it was just something that became integral to how I lived.
Okay, so when you said you were living yogically, can you explain what you mean by that?
Everything was very physical to begin with. Everything was all about asana, but then I started realizing that how important the breath was and how important relaxation was, and I started integrating things with my own daily life. I worked as a school services officer in a school, and I started working bits and pieces in with the kids that I was working with, just, little things. And it was mostly about how we sat and just how we dealt with one another. It wasn't really until I actually started studying yoga teaching that I could look back and reflect on the yamas and the niyamas and see how they had become woven throughout my life as well, just living yogically without actually even realizing I was doing it, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I understand. I always say yoga gets in your bones, and I don't exactly even know what that means, but somehow it just becomes all part of you, you know?
Yes, I totally agree with that. I tend to think of yoga as almost being like an organism all of its own, and it does get into your bones. It gets under your skin. It really hooks you in, and I can't think of a better thing to be hooked into.
That's true. That's true. I agree. So you also had, as we all do, I suppose, some issues when you were diagnosed with breast cancer.
Yes, that was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to go through, I think. And yoga was my touchstone through that time. And this is where I really learned that yoga was more than asana, because I actually couldn't practice any asana after my surgery and through chemo, because I had generalized muscle weakness and I would just fall in a puddle on the floor. I couldn't really do anything. So my practice became my breath, really. Everything became about my breath, and I used pranayama to get through the chemo and to help me deal with the anxiety and the stress. And once I started radiotherapy, that's when I started asana practice again. But it was different because everything hurt, so I had to go very carefully.
Oh dear. Okay. But the yoga helped with the pain?
Yes, it did. Yoga helped with everything.
Okay.
And I really do think that yoga does actually help with everything in a variety of ways, but it does help to limber the joints as well as the muscles, and without that practice, I think I would have been a lot worse off.
Okay, that's excellent to know. So you've kind of evolved now, and then actually you're going back to the yoga for breast cancer, but you are teaching a variety of classes for people who are either pregnant or have very recently had the baby, or a little bit down the path and the baby's a bit older. Can you tell us how you got into this particular area?
Oh, I got into this by accident, totally by accident. I teach general yoga classes in a very small town in the middle of Eyre Peninsula in South Australia, and the town is called Lock. I went into yoga teaching thinking that nobody would be interested in coming to yoga classes here in Lock, and lo and behold, people do actually come to yoga classes here. And I had somebody attend a class one night, and she told me afterwards that she was pregnant, and I totally freaked out, thinking that I didn't know enough to be able to teach safely. So when the opportunity arose to IYTA do a diploma of pre and postnatal yoga teaching, and the opportunity arose to do it here in South Australia, so I jumped at it. Through doing that study, which looks at prenatal yoga, mums and bubs yoga, and a dedicated postnatal class, I learned a lot. I learned an awful lot, and through that, I learned so much through studying through IYTA, the Diploma of Pre and Postnatal Yoga Teaching, and during those classes, doing the diploma, we tried out teaching the different styles, including a mums and bubs class, and not with real babies, I might add. We had dolls. And we worked through scenarios. We worked through different scenarios, and it was incredibly chaotic, but it was also a lot of fun. And it was the style that I really liked out of all of those three different types. It was the style that I liked. So the opportunity came for me to teach mums and bubs down at the Port Lincoln School of Yoga, which is 150 k's south of me. So I did a trial run of those classes, and then had the opportunity to teach the dedicated prenatal class down there, and everything grew from there. I now teach prenatal, mums and bubs. I teach a dedicated postnatal class, and we developed the fresh mums class because the mums who had newly delivered, who'd newly birthed their babies, wanted a reason to get out of bed, get out of the house, have a shower, and someone to encourage them to do the abdominal exercises that they're meant to do after birth. And everything was coordinated with a physio who guided me in what was recommended, no matter whether the birth was a normal vaginal delivery or whether it was a C-section. So everything was really safe for those mums coming in straight from having given birth within the first couple of weeks.
Wow. So is that pretty new? I mean, I'm just going by my own experience, and really you weren't supposed to do anything for at least 6 weeks and then not do a whole lot for, the rest of the 9 months. So, kind of like it took you 9 months to have the baby, and now it's going to take you 9 months to get back into shape.
Yeah.
But this is pretty new. I mean, what's different about it compared to the regular postnatal kinds of things?
Okay. Well, the fresh mums is extremely gentle. The types of movements that we're doing in that particular group is all the stuff that they are told to do when they come out from hospital. When those mums are newly delivered, whether it's from a C-section or a normal vaginal delivery, they're given certain exercises, which basically is about activating the pelvic floor and the transverse abdominis muscle. So really light pelvic tilting, some very light Majariasana, some seated Majariasana. It's all that sort of stuff combined with pranayama. So we're combining it with the breathing and some shoulder release type movements, say the Garuda arms movement, and some very soothing relaxation. Nothing very strenuous at all. It's all the sort of stuff that they're given to do when they get out of hospital, but that they might need some encouragement to do. That was the feedback that I got, was that they needed somebody to just encourage them to actually do the stuff.
Oh, okay.
So I basically went from there. It's basically a group that gets together with their babies. They can discuss anything that they feel like discussing. We do these movements and exercises together. We do some relaxation to help calm and soothe, and some baby massage thrown in there as well for bubs.
So it's kind of like a new mums club, except it's got a few other excellent purposes. Is that a fair thing to say?
Basically, it's a new mums group that has the yoga principles thrown in there with some relaxation and techniques to help calm, because it's a really stressful time. It's especially for first-time mums, but even if you're second or third bub down the track, it can still be quite a stressful time. So to have mums get together and to be able to discuss that, it's a no-holds-barred type of thing as well. I say to all the mums in the mums and bubs groups and the fresh mums groups, it doesn't matter if your baby is really unsettled, if they're crying, they still should come if they feel up to it, because I'd rather that they be there in a group where they're getting support than being at home on their own with an unsettled baby and getting stressed out.
Yeah, and that support is really important, I think. Especially for brand new moms who haven't been through that before. So I really congratulate you on that. I think that's an excellent way to approach it.
It came about totally from the Fresh Mums group, came about totally from the feedback from the mums that I was working with, especially those in prenatal. They wanted something that they could go to as soon as they felt up to it after they'd birthed, and were sort of afraid that they might get stuck at home and feel isolated. At least this way, it's a once-a-week thing. They don't feel isolated. And the groups through CAFs don't start until somewhere down the track. So the mums groups that run through the hospital or through the CAFs, they could be waiting 6 months before that actually starts happening.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
It is a long time.
it can be a long time. So this gives them something that they can connect with straight away and connect with other mums, and especially in a rural area where you can feel really isolated.
Yeah, right. I agree. Okay, well, you said that you came about this really almost accidentally, because you had a pregnant woman in your class and you didn't feel confident in teaching her. And I think is that a correct statement?
Oh, yes, very much so.
Okay. So you took some extra training to feel more confident and to build that knowledge. I've heard this from a lot of different teachers for a lot of different populations. And so I'm asking if you have any suggestions on what should happen in teacher training so that people might feel a little more prepared for the population that, at least in my teacher training, I was taught to teach the young, flexible, in great shape person.
Yeah.
And if you're not in that little group or that demographic, you may or may not feel very comfortable teaching. So what would you suggest that teacher training should do or should include?
Well, the teacher training that I had, which was through IYTA, actually did do some pre- and postnatal stuff. It's just, and it did some yoga for seniors and yoga for kids. There was that sort of stuff actually included. I suppose I just didn't feel that there was enough of it, and
Okay.
I don't know what the answer would be, because my course was actually over a year. It was actually a 12-month diploma course, the 350 hours. So I came out as a level 1 teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And whether they expand upon that fully, I don't actually know. I also think there needs to be a little bit more recognition for the fact that these are actually specialist groups. When you're working in pre- and postnatal, or with seniors, or with kids, or with women with breast cancer, or women with lymphedema, or men either, these are really specialist areas, and I think there does need to be a little bit more recognition about that.
Okay.
But yoga in general is not a one-size-fits-all anyway. As yoga teachers, we should actually be adapting and modifying what we're doing according to each person that is within that class.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
But I also agree with you that when you, I would be quite nervous if I got a pregnant, not likely who I teach, but if I got a pregnant person, because I would feel very unprepared for that. And I did have like a couple of hours in my training about pre and postnatal, but that didn't really give me the confidence or prepare me, I don't think. And I'm just exploring this because so many people have said this, that they just didn't have the confidence to teach a certain population. And so I was just exploring what people thought we might be able to do about it. So let's get back to, you're now going into a new area, it sounds like, or adding,
Yeah.
which is yoga for breast cancer and yoga for lymphedema. Could you explain, first of all, what lymphedema is, so that people listening who may not be aware of what that particular condition is?
Okay, well, lymphedema is a swelling. It's a type of swelling that happens, it can happen because you're born with it, so there's a condition of primary lymphedema, or it can happen as a secondary reaction to cancer treatment, or to surgery, or to injury, or to infection of some description. The lymph is a fluid that flows through the lymphatic system. It flows from the circulatory system into the lymphatic system and back again, quite normally. What happens with lymphedema is that lymph fluid gets stuck, and it gets stuck and it has trouble draining back. So when you have lymphedema, it's important to get that fluid draining back. It causes swelling and it's very painful, and it generally starts at the extremities. So if you've got lymphedema of the legs, it might start at the feet and then work its way up, or it might start in the hands and work its way up the arm. That's generally the way that it works. And it can cause a lot of other effects, a risk of infection, a risk of cellulitis infection. It's quite a complex thing, and to drain the fluid from the affected area is actually quite a complex thing, because the lymph works in a certain way, and it works in a certain way through the body. So you need to actually get one area cleared to work on the area that you're actually aiming for. So there's a real process involved with this, and it's actually very, very complex. And not enough is really known about lymphedema. Sadly, a lot of doctors don't know enough about lymphedema either. Like they're floundering as well, a little bit out there on their own. There's not enough people who really know enough about manual lymphatic drainage. There's not enough specialists in that area.
Okay, so how is yoga addressing this?
Well, through the movements, through very specific movements that are coordinated to work through the body in the way that lymph flows, clearing the areas before you actually get to the area that you're aiming for. and coordinating with the breath, yoga can have a really positive impact on lymphedema. It needs to be done in a very specific way and very much targeted to the person and the level of lymphedema that they have and in the area in which they have. But for example, deep breathing, yogic breathing, working from the lower abdomen to the middle of the chest to the upper chest, and then exhaling from the lower to the middle and then the upper, actually helps to create pressure changes within the body that helps the lymph to flow. So you would start with the breathing first, coordinating that with Mula Bandha. So do the straight breathing first and then add Mula Bandha. And when I say Mula Bandha, I mean coordinating the contraction of the pelvic floor and then also the transverse abdominis, so drawing the lower abdominal muscles across and then back on the exhalation. And that can increase the pressure changes within the body to encourage lymphatic flow as well. So just doing the breathing alone can have a positive impact.
Well, that's good to know.
Which I find quite amazing. I find it absolutely amazing that the breath can have such an impact.
Yeah. Okay. So you're studying now on yoga for breast cancer and yoga for lymphedema. You said you live with lymphedema yourself because you have already shared that you did have breast cancer earlier in your life. Is this been helpful to you? Have you kind of worked out your own system that works for your body?
Yes, very much. It's still trial and error for me, but I have been practicing this now for a year and working out what works best for me, using myself as a bit of a guinea pig and working with the principles that I've learned to help manage my condition. And I'm very lucky. It's not even particularly bad for me. I don't have the major swelling that a lot of people do.
Okay.
And I don't actually have to wear compression wear at all, whereas others do have to wear the arm compression in particular is very common in women who've had
I've seen
breast
people
cancer.
with that. I didn't realize that was lymphedema. So that's something I've learned today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything you'd like to share on tips of teaching this group with people with breast cancer and people with lymphedema?
It needs to be a slow process. It needs to be slow and steady, and there needs to be, particularly with lymphedema, there needs to be rests between moving on to the next practice, whatever it is. So a round of, say, between 3 and 6 would then result in a rest break. For lymphedema, the lymph flows for an extra 2 minutes afterwards, so just flopping, literally flopping and remaining on the floor in Shavasana for a couple of minutes before moving on to the next section. Is women who have breast cancer also need to take it very slowly and very carefully, because we need to get the parasympathetic nervous system to kick in and to calm and quiet the sympathetic nervous system. So to take things slowly and quietly is really important with that as well, because it's a very stressful time going through breast cancer. So you're in a heightened state of anxiety for a very long time. And even after you finish treatment, that heightened state of anxiety remains. And I'm 10 years down the track, and I still get very stirred up when I have to go for my annual checkup. These things have a long-term impact that is often not really considered. So to take care of the woman in a very slow and careful fashion is very, very important. And it also involves looking at the energy systems as well. So looking at things from the perspective of the pranavayus and getting the energy systems balanced is another consideration with somebody having gone through breast cancer. That's I can't really think of anything else at this point.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. I feel like I've learned a lot. So we're about ready to tie everything up. And is anything else that you would like to say before we leave? And
no, I can't really think of anything except to say that these are actually very highly specialised areas, and if anybody is interested in taking these areas up, I would encourage them to go and do some further study with somebody who's actually done a lot of studies in this area, and because there's just not enough information out there, and there aren't enough people out there skilled to really help in this demographic with people with lymphedema or women who've had breast cancer.
Okay, I certainly agree with that. So if any of you would like to get a hold of Paula, she's in Locke, is that correct, in South Australia?
That's correct.
And also a lot of traveling around, which I'm very impressed with. Her contact details, her phone number is 0428 718 535. And is there any place, and she has a Facebook page, it's Haven Yoga and Wellness. And her website is www.havenyogaandwellness, all one word, .com.au. And you can find out a little bit more about what Paula's doing, and she's doing some really, really great work. So I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and giving us the benefit of your really extensive knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Paula.